Hey, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
You're looking for the corn dogs at the Great American State Fair. I just found them. They're at the last pavilion right by the Washington Monument behind the stage. I got a giant lemonade and this corn dog.
They called it America's most embarrassing export before they even tasted it. But what happens when the ridiculous food becomes the thing you cannot stop thinking about? What if the real embarrassment was judging an entire culture from a photograph? At America's state fairs, Europeans came expecting grease, excess, and a punchline. Instead, one bite after another began tearing apart the story they had already been told about America. Corn dog conversion. There's something wonderfully American about taking a perfectly respectable sausage, putting it on a stick, wrapping it in sweet cornmeal batter, dropping it into hot oil, and somehow turning the whole operation into a cultural event. From a distance, the corn dog can look almost too simple to deserve this much attention. Then you walk into an American state fair, smell that warm batter drifting past the midway, watch people carrying them around like edible souvenirs, and suddenly the joke starts turning on the person who dismissed it. That change in perspective matters, especially after years of European headlines and television segments that often reduce American food to excess. Bigger portions, more frying, more sugar, more everything. During the 2026 World Cup, many European visitors arrived with an image of the United States already assembled for them by news reports, movies, social media clips, and political commentary. Yet ordinary America has a habit of complicating that picture. Sometimes it does so with a skyline or a national park. At a state fair, apparently, it can happen with mustard on a stick. The corn dog is a perfect example because Europe already has strong traditions of casual festival food. At Germany's Volksfeste, bratwurst comes hot from the grill, often tucked into a small bread roll with mustard. British fairs have long featured hot dogs, burgers, chips, and warm donuts. In France, outdoor fetes and markets lean toward crepes, waffles, and regional specialties. None of these traditions needs replacing because they are part of what makes those places themselves. America simply takes the same basic human instinct. Give me something hot, portable, and satisfying while I wander around, and turns the volume knob a few clicks to the right. The stick is part of the genius. Nobody attending a fair wants to conduct a formal dinner while standing beside a livestock barn or waiting for a Ferris wheel. A corn dog asked almost nothing from you. One hand, several napkins, and enough dignity to accept that mustard will eventually land somewhere it was never invited. Then comes the flavor, which is where many first impressions begin to wobble. The outside carries that slightly sweet cornmeal taste, while the inside remains salty and savory. That sweet and salty combination is familiar across American cooking, but inside a European festival food frame, it can feel unexpectedly different. What looked like another example of American excess suddenly makes practical sense. And perhaps that is why state fair food can be such an effective little ambassador. It does not ask visitors to admire America from a distance. It puts them inside a noisy, crowded, proudly local tradition where families eat the same ridiculous-looking snack beside farmers, teenagers, grandparents, and tourists. The corn dog may never qualify as fine dining, and nobody at the fair appears particularly worried about that. Its job is much more American. Be generous, be fun, taste good, and make sure nobody walks away hungry. Fried curiosity. A state fair food stand has one advantage that almost no ordinary restaurant enjoys. Nobody walks up expecting restraint. People arrive ready to be surprised, which explains why a cookie that normally belongs beside a glass of milk can suddenly emerge from a fryer wearing a golden coat of batter and somehow become the thing everyone wants to photograph first and eat second. That is where deep-fried Oreos become much more interesting than the joke suggests. The real attraction is not simply sugar or oil, it is permission. American state fairs create a temporary little universe where familiar food is allowed to misbehave, and visitors are encouraged to try something they would never order on a Tuesday afternoon back home. The Iowa State Fair alone reported a record attendance of 182,682 people in 2024, which tells you how powerful that environment can be. When more than 1 million people gather around rides, livestock barns, music, and food stands, eating becomes part of the entertainment rather than a break from it. That is a very different rhythm from many well-known European food traditions. Walk through Borough Market in London and the pleasure often comes from craftsmanship, provenance, and discovering a particularly good version of something recognizable. Visit a Christmas market in Munich and you might expect bratwurst, roasted almonds, gingerbread, or warm glühwein, served within traditions people have known for generations. Those experiences are wonderful precisely because continuity matters. The American fair happily walks in from the opposite direction carrying an Oreo in one hand and a fryer basket in the other. Here, the question is often less, how authentic is this, and more, what happens if we try it? That attitude explains why foods such as deep-fried cookies, candy bars, and other unlikely combinations survive long enough to become fairground traditions of their own. The novelty gives people a reason to buy the first one, but the sensory contrast explains the second bite. Heat softens the cookie, the cream filling becomes warm, while the batter creates a crisp outer shell. A familiar supermarket snack suddenly behaves like a fresh dessert. It is basically an Oreo after spending summer vacation with somebody's southern grandmother. That transformation also shows why calling state fair food embarrassing misses the point. Nobody's pretending that a deep-fried Oreo belongs on a white tablecloth beside a sommelier. Its natural habitat includes paper trays, powdered sugar, screaming children, Ferris wheels, and at least one person realizing too late that wearing a black shirt near powdered sugar was an operational mistake. The appeal comes from America's comfort with turning food into play. Plenty of cultures protect culinary traditions by preserving them carefully, and America does that too. State fairs celebrate another instinct entirely: experimentation without embarrassment. Take something people already know, make it warmer, stranger, and more shareable, then see whether the crowd smiles. That freedom can be surprisingly addictive for visitors accustomed to more predictable festival menus. You are not simply choosing lunch, you are scanning the midway for the next edible dare that somehow smells fantastic. By the end of the day, the strangest thing about deep-fried Oreos may be how quickly they stop looking strange. Pork chop on a stick. At first glance, a pork chop served on a stick seems like exactly the sort of thing outsiders expect America to invent, after looking at a plate and deciding the fork was unnecessary paperwork. Yet at a state fair, that little wooden handle tells a much bigger story, because this food is tied directly to the agricultural identity of the place serving it. Take Iowa, where pork is not some random carnival ingredient pulled from a freezer truck. And according to USDA hog inventories, Iowa consistently keeps more than 20 million hogs and pigs, by far the largest number of any US state. That scale explains why pork shows up so naturally at the Iowa State Fair. The food stand is sitting only a few cultural steps away from the farms, livestock barns, and agricultural competitions that built the fair in the first place. That connection is easy to miss if somebody arrives expecting American fair food to be nothing more than a parade of calories wearing novelty hats. In Europe, agricultural festivals often keep the relationship between food and farming more visible. At rural fairs in Britain, livestock judging, local cheeses, meat pies, and produce stalls can all sit within the same event. In Bavaria, regional food at traditional festivals still carries a strong sense of place, whether it is roast chicken, sausages, or pretzels arriving at long, communal tables. Americans did not abandon that idea. They simply gave it a Midwestern accent and naturally put a handle on it. The pork chop on a stick works because it belongs there. This is where the criticism of state fair food as some embarrassing American export starts feeling much less convincing. A thick pork chop is not trying to imitate French haute cuisine, nor should it. It comes from a culture where agriculture remains part of the public celebration, rather than something hidden behind supermarket packaging. You can walk past prized livestock, hear families talking about farming, then buy pork cooked a few hundred yards away. That is not culinary confusion. That is a fair reminding people where dinner actually begins. There's also something unmistakably American about making agricultural pride approachable instead of ceremonial. Nobody hands you a lecture about pork production before lunch. They hand you the chop. And yes, the stick looks funny until you understand the engineering problem. State fairs can attract enormous crowds, and nobody wants to balance a ceramic plate while walking past tractors, carnival games, and a child carrying a lemonade roughly the size of a household fire extinguisher. The wooden stick turns a serious piece of meat into something you can eat while moving. The humor is built into the practicality. For many European visitors, that may be the deeper surprise. American food culture is often portrayed abroad through fast food chains and oversized restaurant portions, but a state fair reveals another America entirely. Regional, agricultural, local, and intensely proud of what nearby communities produce. A pork chop on a stick looks wonderfully ridiculous for about 10 seconds. Then you notice where you are, and it starts making perfect sense. Cheese curds. Cheese already has one of the strongest passports in Europe, which is exactly why fried cheese curds can be so disarming. Visitors from France, Switzerland, the Netherlands, or Italy are hardly strangers to dairy culture, yet the American Midwest takes cheese into a completely different social setting. Hot oil, paper baskets, bare hands, and absolutely no expectation that anyone should discuss tasting notes before taking a bite. That change of setting is what makes cheese curds worth talking about. In France, cheese often arrives with ritual attached to it, whether it appears after dinner at a neighborhood market or behind a counter where people know exactly which region produced it. Switzerland has raclette and fondue, while the Netherlands treats Gouda almost like national infrastructure. Those traditions are rich because they respect time, craft, and place. Wisconsin respects those things too, but then somebody looks at a fresh cheese curd and decides it would be even better wearing batter. Wisconsin produces roughly a quarter of all cheese made in the United States, according to USDA production data, which helps explain why cheese curds feel so natural across Midwestern fairs. They are not some carnival invention designed by a marketing department trying to make dairy look exciting. Fresh curds are a real byproduct of cheese making, and the best ones are famous for that little squeak against your teeth, a sign associated with freshness and their springy protein structure. Then the fryer changes the entire personality. The outside becomes crisp while the cheese inside softens without completely disappearing, creating that hot, salty contrast people start chasing after the first handful. This is where the addictive quality becomes less mysterious. Researchers studying food preference have repeatedly found that combinations of fat, salt, texture, and temperature can make foods especially rewarding, and fried cheese curds practically arrive carrying the entire checklist in one paper tray. There is also something wonderfully democratic about the way Americans serve them. Nobody needs to know the difference between Comté and Gruyere before joining in. A teenager, a dairy farmer, a tourist from Amsterdam, and somebody's grandmother can all stand beside the same midway, pick up the same curd, burn their tongue in exactly the same way, and immediately reach for another one. That is a very American kind of hospitality. State fair food often gets mocked because it looks excessive in photographs, especially when a close-up removes the crowd, the barns, the music, and the sense of occasion surrounding it. Cheese curds make far more sense once the whole setting is restored. This is food designed for movement, noise, sharing, and the small pleasure of discovering that something familiar can behave differently when a culture stops treating it too seriously. Europe taught the world countless sophisticated ways to love cheese. The Midwest simply added a fryer, handed everybody a paper basket, and somehow made the lesson a lot louder. Funnel cake. Powdered sugar has a remarkable talent for exposing exactly who has eaten funnel cake within the last 5 minutes. It ends up on shirts, fingertips, phone screens, and occasionally the face of someone who was absolutely certain they could handle the situation neatly. That mild chaos is part of the charm, because funnel cake belongs to a category of American fare food where neatness was never invited to the party. Unlike a corn dog or cheese curds, the real appeal here is not convenience or novelty. Funnel cake is built around nostalgia, and American state fairs are unusually good at turning nostalgia into something you can smell from 50 feet away. The batter itself could hardly be more ordinary. Flour, eggs, milk, sugar, and leavening, depending on the recipe. What changes everything is the method. Instead of shaping dough into a tidy pastry, the batter is poured through a funnel or dispenser directly into hot oil, creating a tangled web of crisp edges and soft centers. There is no perfect geometric form because the whole point is that every cake looks slightly improvised, almost as if a pancake lost control of the steering wheel. That appearance suits the fair perfectly. European visitors may recognize pieces of the idea without recognizing the whole experience. In Spain, churros turn fried dough into neat ridged sticks, commonly eaten with sugar or chocolate. In the Netherlands, oliebollen arrive as compact fried dough balls around New Year. Germany has its own long tradition of fried pastries at fairs and seasonal celebrations. America takes the same ancient pleasure in hot dough and gives it the personality of a county grandstand. Wider, messier, covered in powdered sugar, and perfectly comfortable with being eaten from a paper plate while somebody wins a stuffed bear nearby. There is history behind that familiarity as well. Funnel cakes became especially associated with Pennsylvania Dutch communities, and later with American fairs, carnivals, and amusement parks, where they developed into one of those foods whose smell can trigger memories before the first bite arrives. Food scientists have long documented the unusually strong connection between smell and autobiographical memory, because olfactory signals have direct links to brain regions involved in emotion and memory. At a fair, that biology gets a little help from hot oil and sugar. That explains why people who ate funnel cake as children often do not experience it as just dessert. The smell can bring back summer heat. Wooden bleachers, livestock barns, carnival lights, and parents handing over a paper plate with the hopeless instruction to be careful. For a newcomer, that is the interesting part. American state fair food is often photographed as if the food exists alone, divorced from the generations of families who return to the same grounds and look for the same stands. Once that context appears, funnel cake stops looking like random fried batter and starts looking more like an edible family tradition. France has made pastry elegant enough for glass display cases. Vienna can make cake feel almost ceremonial. America sometimes puts dessert on a paper plate, buries it under powdered sugar, and lets the summer breeze finish the decorating. Somehow that version creates memories too. Turkey leg. A giant turkey leg does something very few foods can accomplish before anyone even tastes it, It makes the person holding it look like they have accidentally wandered out of a medieval banquet and into an American Midway. That visual is part of the attraction, but the deeper reason turkey legs work so well at state fairs has less to do with novelty than with America's unusual talent for turning portion size into theater. This is food designed to be seen from across the walkway. The average fairgoer does not need a menu description when somebody passes carrying a smoked turkey leg roughly the length of a forearm. The product advertises itself, and that matters in a place where dozens of vendors are competing with flashing rides, live music, livestock shows, and enough neon to make Times Square feel slightly underdressed. According to USDA figures, the United States raises roughly 200 million turkeys in a typical recent year, making turkey far more than a Thanksgiving-only ingredient. State fairs simply reveal another side of that enormous agricultural tradition, serving the bird in a form that feels almost comically generous without requiring much decoration. European festival food certainly understands abundance, although it often expresses it differently. At Munich's Oktoberfest, roast chicken remains one of the signature foods, traditionally served by the half-bird rather than transformed into an oversized handheld centerpiece. British agricultural shows offer substantial meat pies, sausage rolls, and roast meat sandwiches, while fairs across Central Europe frequently rely on sausages that are filling without becoming visual landmarks. America takes the same idea of hearty festival food and makes the serving itself part of the entertainment. That difference helps explain why the turkey leg becomes oddly irresistible even before hunger enters the equation. Psychologists studying food perception have repeatedly shown that visual cues influence expectations about fullness, value, and enjoyment. A large portion signals generosity before the first bite, and at a state fair, generosity is part of the social contract. Nobody walks through the gate hoping their lunch arrives looking emotionally unavailable. The turkey leg delivers the opposite message. Its smoky aroma travels farther than delicate food ever could, while the browned skin and exposed bone make it instantly recognizable without packaging or explanation. There is something refreshingly direct about the whole arrangement because the food does not pretend to be elegant, restrained, or carefully plated for social media. Ironically, that makes it spectacular on social media anyway. The deeper cultural difference is that Americans often treat abundance as a form of hospitality rather than something requiring apology. A generous plate says that guests should leave satisfied, and the state fair magnifies that instinct until lunch begins resembling sporting equipment. The joke works because everybody understands the exaggeration, while the pleasure remains completely sincere. Visitors used to smaller festival portions may initially see the turkey leg as another American excess story waiting to happen. After carrying one around for 20 minutes while strangers glance at it like they are reconsidering their own lunch choices, the interpretation can change rather quickly. Suddenly, the size feels less ridiculous and more celebratory. America did not invent eating large pieces of roasted meat, and nobody needs to pretend it did. What the state fair perfected was making that abundance visible, portable, communal, and just theatrical enough that lunch becomes part of the memory, rather than something eaten between attractions. A turkey leg is basically dinner with stage presence, and America knows exactly how to give it an entrance. Fried pickles. Fried pickles are one of those foods that make more sense after the third bite than before the first. On paper, the idea sounds almost argumentative. Take something cold, sour, salty, and crunchy, cover it in seasoned batter, then throw it into hot oil. Yet that collision is exactly why people keep reaching back into the basket, because fried pickles are built around contrast rather than sheer richness. That matters at a state fair, where your taste buds are already being asked to work overtime. After something sweet, smoky, cheesy, or heavy, the sharp acidity of a pickle behaves almost like somebody opening a window in a crowded room. The vinegar wakes everything up, the salt keeps the flavor loud, and the hot crust adds a second kind of crunch around the colder, juicier center. Food scientists describe this kind of sensory contrast as one reason certain snacks remain interesting bite after bite. The mouth keeps receiving changing signals instead of one continuous wall of richness. America did not invent pickling, of course, and Europe has centuries of evidence to prove it. Germany has its beloved Spreewald gherkins, Poland has a Gorky Kishon fermented with dill and garlic, while British fish and chip shops have long served pickled onions and gherkins beside fried food. Europeans already understand that sourness can rescue a rich meal. The American contribution is wonderfully straightforward. If the pickle works beside the fryer, perhaps it should spend a little time inside it. There's also a reason this particular flavor feels so deeply at home in the United States. An often cited USDA estimate puts American pickle consumption at roughly 9 pounds per person each year. That is a lot of cucumbers living their second life in vinegar. Pickles appear beside burgers, barbecue, deli sandwiches, fried chicken, and countless regional dishes, so frying them at a fair is less culinary rebellion than an old American supporting actor finally getting its own scene. And it steals the scene surprisingly well. Unlike foods that win attention through size, fried pickles have a quieter trick. They reset your appetite. A basket can arrive after something rich and somehow convince the brain that the eating portion of the afternoon is still very much open for business. It is the culinary equivalent of saying, I was finished, but apparently I have reconsidered. That is where state fair culture becomes cleverer than the caricature suggests. From outside America, fair food can look like a competition to see who can put the most calories under one roof. Once you actually understand the menu, however, there is rhythm to it. Sweet foods are followed by salty ones, smoky meat by something acidic, soft textures by crunch. People roam instead of sitting through formal courses, so their appetite is managed by contrast rather than by a chef deciding the order. A fairground becomes its own strange tasting menu, except nobody's whispering and somebody nearby is trying to win a 6-foot stuffed banana. Fried pickles fit that world perfectly because they turn a humble side item into something people actively crave. There's no ceremony, no precious plating, and no attempt to pretend the food came from somewhere more sophisticated than a fryer beside a Midway. That confidence is part of the appeal. Europe perfected countless elegant ways to preserve vegetables through winter. America looked at one of those preserved vegetables, gave it a crispy jacket, handed over ranch dressing, and invited it to the fair. Some traditions are preserved in jars. Others apparently need a fryer. Maybe the real surprise was never what Americans put in the fryer, but what visitors discovered around it. Generosity, humor, regional pride, and a culture that refuses to apologize for enjoying itself. State fair food may look outrageous from a distance, yet up close it feels unmistakably human. Which fair food would you hand to a skeptical European first, and why? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal America beyond the headlines.